the road again. We can't wait to get on the road again. Telling stories to our family and our friends. We can't wait to get on the road again. On the road again. We can't wait to get on the road again. Telling stories to our friends. We can't wait to get on the road again.
Welcome to our monthly AAA podcast, Affinity, Allie, and Annette on the road to good storytelling with your hosts, Allie Spooner and Annette Mori.
Welcome. I'm Allie Spooner and I write with Affinity. With over 40 published titles, I touch on many genres, from romance to paranormal. I have numerous series, and lately I've focused more on teaching myself to write short stories and standalone books. I hope you enjoy our podcast and have an opportunity to meet some authors new to you or to learn more about your favorites. We appreciate your support and invite you to visit Affinity Rainbow Publications to check out our books.
And I'm Annette Mori, also with Affinity Rainbow Publications. I'm pretty sure I've settled into a brand now that includes kind of a quirky, unconventional style of writing. And most recently, I've been writing a lot of thrillers, or continuing with my series of thrillers. Still feel like I have a lot to learn from other authors, which is why I really enjoy doing the AAA podcast. So I hope that our guests will help illuminate me and some of you out there. Really, I'm so thankful to have a small but very mighty group of readers that follow me, and I very much appreciate all the support.
All right. Each month, we'll invite a special guest to join us as we discuss various topics of interest to writers and readers. We'll invite our guests to do a short reading and then follow with questions on the featured topic, while encouraging them to do at least one giveaway to our audience.
This month, we'll be talking about spin-off series books, or books that build on beloved characters from previous books. We feel really lucky to have author Jen Silver, who's also an Affinity Rainbow Publications author, and she's here with us today. Like myself, Jen wrote a book well into the future called Changing Times that incorporated characters from her very popular novel, Changing Perspectives, which was a Goldie finalist.
Following our podcast, we'll upload to a newly created YouTube channel to hope you consider subscribing so you never miss a podcast.
So it's my great pleasure to introduce Jen Silver. When not writing stories, Jen spends her days reading, playing golf, shooting arrows, and enjoying quality time with her wife, not necessarily in that order. Very smart of you to say that.
Yeah.
In case your wife is watching. Affinity Rainbow Publications published her debut novel, Starting Over, in 2014. Now, with more novels and short stories to her name, there's not as much time as she thought for other activities. Running from Love was shortlisted for a 2017 Diva Literary Award in romance. Changing Perspectives was a finalist for the 2018 Goldie Award, general fiction. Her audiobooks include Changing Perspectives, Starting Over, Darcy Comes Home, and Country Living, all narrated by Nicola Victoria Vincent. For the characters in Jen's stories, life definitely begins at 40 and older as they continue to discover and enjoy their appetites for adventure and romance.
All right. So without further ado, Jen, if you're ready, take it away.
Well, that's great. Thank you for the introduction. And so I'm going to read from Starting Over, which, as you mentioned, was my debut novel, and that's the cover for it. It was interesting to write, I have to say. So I'd never actually finished a book at that stage. I had various drafts of things sitting in drawers that hadn't gone anywhere. So this was my first completed novel, and I'm going to read from chapter 1, but I'm starting about 10 pages in, but I think you'll get the idea of what's happening. The second time around the ring road, and Jasmine felt she'd entered one of Dante's circles of hell. Hadn't she passed the university twice now? She had trusted Robin's directions rather than sat-nav, which Robin told her was useless in this area, likely to direct her to the bottom of a reservoir a drowned village from the past, like Atlantis. Then she saw it, the exit she wanted, but she was in the wrong lane, and there was a constant flow of traffic either side of her. She was doomed to make another pass of this circle, the circle of the damned. What had she done to deserve this version of hell? Falling in love with Robin? Could that be counted as a sin? It had started as a casual one-night stand, and then expanded to a series of one-nighters, sometimes two, whenever Rob visited London. Now she was hooked. She wanted more. And what was she going to find at Starling Hill Farm? Whenever she tried to fish for information, Robin would deflect her. So far, she'd only learned that she lived there with her business partner, Eleanor Winters. Googling it, there was only one small photo of the potter, black and white, which didn't give any useful information like hair color or eye. Even so, the woman didn't look like someone who would attract Robin. Rather mousy, she thought. But she obviously had some kind of a hold over her lover. What was it that Robin wouldn't tell her? Well, she was going to find out for herself if she ever got off the Huddersfield Ring Road. Arriving at the farm, an hour later than planned, Jasmine was in a foul mood when she finally drove into the yard. There were several vehicles parked up, an ancient Land Rover, an equally ancient Corsa, and a much newer, sleek, black Harley-Davidson motorcycle. At least the presence of the bike showed that Robin was here. She pulled into the space next to the rust heap of a car and climbed out, feeling the stiffness in her knees. Her lower back screamed at her as well. Damn, she should have taken the train. The place looked deserted, in spite of the number of vehicles. The house had a lonely, forbidding air, its narrow windows and grey stone facade giving it a decidedly Gothic look. She gazed at the other structures, a chicken enclosure, and a rundown barn. Trying the house first seemed the best option. Knocking at the door, she wondered again if this hadn't been a colossal mistake. A quick cup of tea and she would head back to London. The door opened when she pushed on it. Of course, she was in the country now. Feeling like an overdressed burglar, she stepped into the gloom of a low-ceilinged room. Hello? Only the ticking of a clock from somewhere in the room greeted her entrance. Anyone home? Christ, how could anyone want to live here? The deathly quiet atmosphere started to creep her out. She reached into her bag and pulled out her phone. No messages. So Robin hadn't even been concerned that she was late. Angrily, she clicked on Robin's name in her contacts list. She hadn't driven 200 miles to be ignored. Into the silence came the sound of Robin's ringtone. She followed the sound into the kitchen. The ringing stopped as soon as she reached the device, sitting on the counter next to a mug of cold coffee. A large ginger cat sat on the window ledge, opened one eye and closed it again. Fuck's sake, Robin, where the hell are you? And who, may I ask, are you? Jasmine turned round and found herself looking at the mouse-like creature from the website. Older than she had expected. The photo on the website must be 20 years old at least. But blonde, blue-eyed, and unfortunately more attractive than the picture suggested. She put on her best smile and held out her hand. Jasmine Pepper, you must be Eleanor. The woman ignored her proffered hand and walked past her. She filled the kettle and put it on the aga. Without turning from the stove, the other woman said, Robin's in the studio. Sensing that was all she was going to get in the way of conversation, Jasmine said, Oh, okay, thanks. She found her way back out into the yard. The studio must be the dilapidated-looking barn thing. For the second or possibly third time that day, she thought she should cut her losses and head back to civilization. Thank you.
Very
good,
good.
Jen.
I'd almost forgotten about your wry humor.
Yeah.
Okay.
I read your book so long ago, and yeah, I'd almost forgotten about it, and now I was reminded. It was great reading, Jen.
Well, that's why I like that scene. It does have a bit of humor in it. So
It does.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Nothing like a little bit of roundabout hell.
Yeah, Dante's Circle. I love that.
Yeah.
We have a lot of roundabouts here.
Yeah.
We have them here too, and
Yeah.
what a perfect description. Dante's. I'm gonna have to remember that the next time I go around one of those damn things.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially if
And
you want to
usually
get
they're in the
somewhere.
most unnecessary places. It's
I
like,
know.
oh, just let me turn. Yeah.
I'd rather have speed bumps, to be honest. If
Yeah.
that's the whole thing that they want to slow people down, put a speed bump there. Because those roundabouts, it's like who goes, and I mean, I just think that they are recipes for disaster.
Absolutely. Definitely.
Well, I guess you're looking on the different side of the road. For us, we have to check what's coming from the right, and then we can go. But it's probably the opposite way for you.
We have to look from every direction because God knows
Yeah.
they come
You
from.
can't trust people not to.
Yes.
Yeah. They all get confused. Trust me.
Yes.
All right, Annette, are you ready?
I am. I'm gonna skip well into to my latest release, The Next Generation, which is set 20 years in the future with the kids of all the women in the organization. And I'm going to actually skip and read a scene from where there's some action. So the first sort of scene where they are confronted with the bad guys. So here we go. Val wasn't about to let the asshats who had followed them into the city get the upper hand. She intended to quietly take them out before they even had a chance to execute their plan. Unfortunately, she hadn't counted on the Mexican police getting involved. Fucking A, she said as she dragged the second man's limp form back to his piece of shit vehicle and tossed him inside. Val recognized the gold chains and fancy dress on one of the men. He was the same guy she'd seen hanging at the bar with Grace's producer. Maria wasn't the only person who had noticed him skulking around. She felt an overwhelming need to exact the ultimate justice on him, but Shar had not improved elimination. Even though Val would bet her entire fortune, he was their original target. The mission had morphed into something new, but it was all tied together into one ugly package. Ah, what the fuck? He doesn't deserve to live. Pulling a syringe from her pocket, she plunged it into his heart. Overweight men had heart attacks every day. One less asshole to transport kids to the mines. She'd explain that executive decision later to Shar. Val only hoped a random passerby would assume both had too much to drink and were sleeping it off. Maybe they lived in their car. It wasn't out of the realm of possibility. It was the best she could do in the spur of the moment. And then Joy had alerted her to the fact that 2 Mexican police cars were fast approaching. At least Joy's machine had not detected any explosives. She was grateful for that. It was a brilliant plan, yet the police involved with some hokey excuse like Grace and her crew didn't have the correct permits to film in Mexico. She had to give it to them. It wasn't a bad plan. Now she had a decision to make. Val could take out the correct Mexican police with her darts, then grab the crew and get the hell out of there. Or she could try to offer a bribe. Alina was the first to reach Val. Pepper followed, still sucking in air. What's the plan? Joy said. What's the plan? Joy said the fuckwads had got the police involved. They're going to try to take them in, Alina said between puffs of breath. We can't let them do that. So it's either a setup and the police are involved, or someone else will take out both police cars once Grace, Nora, Sam, and Maria are in custody. I know, Alina, Val calmly responded. If the 2 men sleeping it off in their car are responsible for taking them out once in custody, we have time. One is enjoying a permanent siesta, she smirked. Why? Pepper asked. Val shrugged. He was your initial target. I made an executive decision. Pepper nodded. Works for me. The group started to make their way back to their vehicles, continuing their discussion of options. I think our best play is to offer money to the police. If they're simply looking to shake them down, it could resolve itself for the near future, at least until they have time to regroup. If the police don't take the bribe, we'll have to choose plan B, Val directed. And what is plan B? Because there is no way I'm letting them put Maria in that car. Alina pointed to the approaching Mexican vehicle. Me neither, Pepper added. Val watched as Grace approached more leisurely than Joy, Pepper, or Alina. She didn't paste on a smile, but greeted Grace. What in the hell is going on? Pepper, something has been off all morning, and I want to know what it is. Grace stood with her hands on her hips. Val smiled because Grace reminded her a little of her wife, Gina. She wasn't a physical fighting machine like Val, but could hold her own in a verbal battle. She wasn't sure it was good fortune when the first Mexican police officer approached, but at least it had interrupted what was sure to be a delicate conversation with Grace. She gestured with a quick lift of her head to Alina. Get Maria in case we need an interpreter. Val narrowed her eyes as the official approached. She watched his body language for signs that he might accept a bribe. She didn't get a good feeling, coupled with the fact that he seemed to know who Grace was on sight. Sam remained a respectable distance, but had turned her camera towards the hullabaloo. And Val thought maybe the filming could serve a later purpose. Thankfully, the officer was so focused on Grace, he didn't realize he was being filmed. Ms. Turner, you did not get a permit for filming in Mexico, the man said in heavily accented English. I'm afraid we will need to take you in for violating our laws. Where are your interpreter and film crew? Grace reached into her bag, smiled, and handed the man a paper. I'm sorry, but I believe you've been given misinformation. Here's the documentation needed. And your visas? We aren't planning on staying in Mexico for an extended period, Grayson answered. I believe we can film without a visa as long as we only plan on being here for less than 6 months. We cannot be short of that, so a visa is required. Come with me, please. The man jerked his head at the other 3 officers who approached. They made their way quickly to where Maria, Sam, and Nora stood, watching the scene unfold. While Sam was easily identifiable with her camera, Nora and Maria were not. Each man grabbed one of their arms at the same time. The officer speaking to Grace roughly handled her. Plan B it is. It's siesta time, Val directed. A dart landed in the officer closest to Val, and she didn't bother to help him to the ground as he crumpled, almost taking Grace with him. While Pepper offered a steady hand to Grace, Val aimed at the other 3 officers, but Alina must have already hit one of them as she saw him stumble and fall. The other two followed shortly after 2 darts hit their mark. Val didn't know and didn't care who had landed their shots. Time to go, girls. Alina, gather up Nora, Sam, and Maria. Joy, call for an extraction team and find us a place to lie low until they arrive. On it, Alina answered, running toward 2 shocked women and 1 smiling girl. Val supposed it wasn't terrible that at least Maria had seen the darts in action before. Sorry, Grace. Pepper will explain everything once we get on our way. Same configuration as on the way here, Val directed. Joy, give Pepper a comlink, okay? And an extra tablet if she wants. Yeah, I'll take a tablet too. Can I have some extra firepower, MV? Pepper answered. How about some beads? Val asked. Pepper grinned in response. Oh yeah, those'll do nicely. Be careful with them, honey. They're in a case right now so they don't jostle around too much. The case helps with the magnetism so they don't attach themselves to something we'd rather they avoid, but it makes them easier to hit a moving car, although they're still a little sensitive. Not my favorite thing to use, but your Aunt Rhonda has been drooling maniac around them. Totally her thing. Grab some in the back of the SUV before you take off. You can't be too cautious now. They'll be desperate. If you see a tail, toss a bead. You know what to look for. Pepper nodded and touched Grace's arm. Who are you people? Grace asked.
Very good. All right.
All right.
Fantastic readings, ladies.
Yeah, thanks. Hey, so I'm going to start out the questioning, Jen, if you don't mind. Changing Perspectives was a novel that entered into a completely new territory from your previous books. I thought it was awesome, by the way. Can you talk about what prompted you to get into something that might be considered outside of your comfort zone? Or was it? Was it outside of your comfort zone or not?
I'm terribly shocked that you even had to ask. I mean, really.
Inquiring minds, want to know.
No, totally outside my comfort zone. Yeah, the story's set in 1993, which is where I was living in London, working in London then. And I was walking to work one day, and there's all these other commuters, 8 o'clock in the morning, all dressed very conservatively, as you can imagine. And then there's this one woman who stood out because she was dressed totally in black leather and chains hanging off various bits of her outfit. And I was just intrigued by this. I thought, well, who is she? Where's she going? Could she be going to work or coming back from somewhere? So this stuck in my mind, and then I started writing the story. And so the main character is Danny, and she's the one dressed in leather. And the first scene is she gets into a fight in a leather bar, which apparently isn't an unusual thing for her. So I wrote most of this story in 1993. And then 2 decades later, took it out of a drawer and gave it a bit of a brush up. And then it still took me a few more years to decide to submit it to Affinity. By then, they'd published 5 of my books. And so I thought, well, what's the worst that can happen? They can say no. But I must say, I think it was the fastest acceptance I've ever had from submitting a book. So they were well into this as well. So you can better ask them that question. And then our intrepid cover designer was straight onto it as well. She said, "Oh, I've got the perfect picture for the cover." I think a lot of people have seen this cover. So
Yeah.
yes, yeah,
Love
that
it.
worked really well for that character. So yes, I was very pleased with the response to it. I thought, well, it's not a book I want my mother to read, but she did read it. She said she didn't quite understand why people did that sort of thing, but hey, who's to judge? Each to their own.
Right.
Which I thought was a great response.
Yeah.
Your mother read it?
Oh yeah.
Oh, fantastic. That's wonderful.
And
She's
so
93 or something.
what'd she say about it? Did she like it?
Oh, she liked it, but
Oh,
she
well, there
just
you go.
said it wasn't the kind of lifestyle she would, enjoy. But it was interesting to read. And yeah, no, she was very, very supportive.
So you're dancing around the whole, wasn't the kind, come on, spit it out. Tell us what this lifestyle was. So people know, because
Well, so Danny is very much into BDSM, and she's a masochist. So her problem is she's 36 years old at the start of the story, and she hasn't been able to find a partner who really can be what she wants, a dominant partner,
Yeah.
A loving relationship.
Right.
Because one of the parts of the research I did, because I had to do research for this, I'll tell you, and came across this phrase about S&M standing for sensuality and mutuality. So between the two people, there has to be this
Yep.
trust.
All right.
Yeah.
Back.
So,
There she is. All right. Well, apparently that's too hot a topic for us to talk about. So we're going to move on to the next question. And this is for
Okay.
both of y'all. Although your books always have a romantic element to them, you varied your love scenes. What is your preference? Fade to black or doors wide open?
is that to me?
Yeah.
Both. Go ahead,
You
Jen.
can answer first. Yeah.
Okay, well, yes. I'm mainly fade to black. I prefer the sort of build up, and then once they've got past the foreplay and start taking their clothes off, I think it's time to shut the door. So I say changing perspectives probably is the most explicit in some terms of that kind of thing. So I think my sex scenes have diminished over time. More fade to black, you know what I mean?
More fade to black.
Yeah.
So I can't remember. I that's what I seem to remember about your books, is that most of the time you do fade to black. But I think, yeah, I think I remember changing perspectives was one that wasn't changing times. Changing times, you didn't have fade to black in that one either, did you? Or did you?
Yeah, there weren't any explicit sex scenes in that one.
Oh, there weren't. for some reason. So Changing Perspectives is the only one that you had more explicit? Or did
Well,
you?
I think the first one's like Starting Over. Because it was my first published book, other family members did read it, and my brother, I think, is the only one he's read because everything had to be redacted after that. Otherwise, he'd be totally shocked. Um, so, yeah, there were a few sex scenes in that one. But yeah, I don't think I really have gone into it too deeply. There was Country Living had a few sex scenes with Carla and her friend.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm. Yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
Annette.
I was trying to, think back on all of my books. I know that there's some that have been more explicit than others. And I do tend to try to put at least one scene in that is not fade to black. But I think particularly with the thrillers, it's like, I don't know, it doesn't seem as important that the
They're
action.
not going to have time, are they? They're shooting up people. They don't have time to.
Right. Yeah, I always thought it was kind of odd that, so it's difficult to find a place where you can stick the more
Excuse me, can you just hold on there?
the sex scene in there. So I've kind of struggled with that. I do remember, I think one book, and I can't remember which one it was, that I actually did not put any explicit scenes in there. They were more fade to black. But
Right.
people just they don't like it when you don't put in a.
I know you get complaints.
So what's my preference? My preference would be that I would never have to write another sex scene again. But I recognize that people actually look forward to at least one scene with some level of intimacy, and
Yeah. I
it's
don't
a
know if
struggle
you do
for me
this.
because
Yeah.
how many different ways can you
I don't know if either of you do this, but I put in add sex scene here, and then hope I remember to fill that in before I submit the book. Yeah.
But yeah, I think I've been doing some less and less as the books go on, but I still give it a shot, and I don't know. Yeah, how many different ways can you
Yeah.
describe?
We're not writing sex manuals, it's just,
Right.
Yeah.
All right. Jen, are there any consistent themes we might find in your books?
Oh, well, I think the one is what was mentioned in my biography, that all my characters are generally aged 40 and over.
Yeah.
I think the exceptions were actually the Changing Perspectives characters, but even them, they're in their mid-30s to late 30s.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess I don't really identify with younger people these days. I'm gonna have to start writing about 70-year-olds. So yeah.
Well, no, and I see on Facebook, people ask for that, and
Oh yeah.
and
Mhm.
I don't think there are that many writers out there who write mature characters.
Yeah. So I think the consistency is in writing about the lives of older women, and they've obviously been through a lot of experiences, different changes. Not the change, I don't write about that, but just the fact that they've got a lot of experience. And maybe they're struggling a bit, with finding a new relationship and that sort of thing. But yeah, that's what happens, I think.
Actually, I think it would be quite fun to write about the change. That could be a humorous novel to write.
Yeah. Well, there you go. Another idea for you.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah. How is writing series books different from a standalone book?
Me?
Yes, both of you actually.
Both of us. Well, I think the thing is you already have your cast of characters and the setting, and yeah, you just feel like you want to go back to them because there's more stories about their lives. Say when I wrote Starting Over, it was just going to be standalone. I had no plans to write 2 more books, but then I started wondering what to write next, and the ideas for the next book started to flow because there were other characters that I felt needed a bit of a spotlight on them. So that's really what happened with that. Um,
Yeah,
Annette.
Allie, yeah, I'd be interested in your perspective on this too, because you write a bunch of books that are series.
Yeah.
In fact, you have a lot of series
Yeah.
and how they're different for you. And
I just get so invested in the characters, it's hard to let go. And
Yeah.
when do you define that perfect stopping place? And it's like, there's still more of the story to be told. So,
yeah.
you have to kind of let it run its course, and in my opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah, I started off saying I don't want to be a series writer. I don't even want to be a writer that's pigeonholed into even one subgenre. I wanted to write
Right.
sci-fi and fantasy and paranormal, and I just wanted to write all these different things. And then I just got a lot of feedback of, when are you going to do a sequel to asset management? So I finally capitulated and said, okay, I'll only do it if Aaron O'Reilly writes it with me.
Okay. Yeah.
And then I really liked some of the characters, especially Val.
Yeah.
Val's one of my favorite characters from the asset management series. So, in the spin-offs, in the last year, the San Diego trilogy, she was in all of those. And I just love her as a character. And she also plays a prominent role in this new spin-off series, The Next Generation, just because she's such a badass and
Yeah.
but very complicated character. But
Yeah.
what's hard about it, and I don't know if it's hard for you, but there are so many, because this series that I've written has so many characters, it's hard to keep them straight. And I'm a pantster, and I know that, Jen, you're a plotter, right?
No, I'm with
Oh,
you.
you're a pantster too? You
Oh,
don't
yeah.
do outlines or anything?
No.
Okay, so so you all must relate to this, but I can tell you, for me, it's really difficult because I have to go back and reread some of,
Oh, yeah.
I don't even remember what color eyes they have. I have to go back and reread.
I think this is one of your other questions, actually, is about the challenging part of writing series books, because that's it. You've got to remember who's who and the timeline and what age they are, what color their eyes are, whatever.
Yes, yes.
So it's keeping track of all their likes and dislikes, their quirks, what they like to eat, that sort of thing. So yeah, it can be difficult. You need a whole database of things, don't you?
Right,
Yeah.
right. And I
Yeah.
don't. Do you have a database of things? Because I don't. And it makes it twice as hard. It is.
I do have a list of names from books, because most of my books have quite a few characters. So remembering who's who and their pets and things as well, if they've got pets. So yeah,
Right,
it's easy
right.
to forget these things.
Yeah, and I don't know. Recently, where Affinity's going through the backlist, and there's a narrator that's doing asset management in the organization in the books previously that came. And as I'm listening to, her narration to see if there's any errors, I'm thinking, oh gosh, I didn't quite, in the future book,
Yeah.
I might have gotten that just a little bit wrong,
Oh, I know, audiobooks. I mean, you pick up all the things that you think you should have done after. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, right.
Yeah.
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 Okay. How do you build the tension in a story without giving up too much?
Well, I say Annette writes more thriller type books, and I'm mainly doing romances. So in romances, the tension comes from how this relationship's going to work out, doesn't it?
Yes.
And so there need to be a few surprises along the way. And being a pantster, you never know what's going to happen, do you?
True.
So, there has to be some obstacles they overcome, either physically or emotionally, before they get their happy ever after. So yeah, that's it really, as far as I can see.
Yeah.
Over to you.
Yeah,
Annette?
I would say, I would say the same thing that, being a pantster really kind of helps. Because then you can write really good twists and turns. But one of the things that I try to do is I try to, even if I don't know who I'm gonna uh, like when I wrote Captivated, I wasn't sure who I was gonna make the bad guy, the one that they were really after.
Okay.
And so I did foreshadowing that could have been many different characters. I also did that with the review, the same thing. I didn't know who I was going to make to be the one who was stalking the person. And so I just thought, just do a little foreshadowing with several different characters, and then I can decide who I want there to be. So
Yeah.
you can, I think foreshadowing is a really good way of sort of building the tension, because it gets people to go, oh, I'm going down this road or this road. And then you go in another direction.
Yeah, well, in murder mysteries, they call them red herrings, don't they?
The red
Yeah.
herrings, yeah.
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 Mm.
Yeah, I like red herrings.
What kind
Okay,
of
fishy story,
conflicts,
yeah.
what
Sorry.
kind of conflicts and complications are your favorite to write?
Ooh, well, I'd say romances, it's the misunderstandings, and reviewers can get really sort of scathing at times about this kind of thing. They say, well, why don't they just talk to each other? You don't have to go on for 50 pages of them not speaking to each other, because they could have sorted this out over a phone call or a cup of coffee or something. So you have to kind of make it believable if you can, and it's challenging, but that can be fun as well to find out, how they're going to get over this.
Yeah. Allie, you usually don't have serious angst or conflicts. You have some. So what are your favorite kind of complications or conflicts?
Well, mine's usually, when I do have some, it's usually around something medical. Somebody gets hurt or somebody gets sick, or something's going on that they're not quite sure, how to address. I'm not real big into the angst, because I think there's enough of that in our daily lives as it is.
Yeah. Mm.
Yeah, I was trying to think what are my favorites? I mean, I know that sometimes I like doing the whole sort of shy, nerdy person who doesn't realize that the other one
Yeah.
likes them, that kind of thing, which is a sort of kind of misunderstanding, but not quite. It's not like the third act breakup. I've tried to think about how many books do I don't really have too many books that have the third act breakup. That isn't a complication that I have really tended to gravitate to.
Yeah.
My complication is throughout the whole book, not just,
Yeah.
All right. And Jen, you've touched on this a little bit with your research for your books, but how much research do you typically do?
Well, I think mostly it's online and reading books and things, but as for starting over, I actually did some physical research. Once I decided that the main character, Ellie, was going to be a potter, I started looking at pottery because I didn't really know much about it. And I came across this site called Vindolanda, and it's an archaeology place where there are ongoing archaeology excavations near Hadrian's Wall. And they take, you can do a 2-week session during spring and summer months. So I volunteered, and in 2014, I went along and did digging. And so I was able to then incorporate, I already had the first draft of starting over ready, but I was able to then incorporate some of what I'd learned into the book, which was great. And I really enjoyed the experience. So I went back several more years after that to digging. But sometimes I talk to experts, and so like any police related stuff, I have a friend who's an ex-police officer, so I could talk to her about things and say, well, did you ever have any experiences? And so yeah, that helps as well.
Wow, that's dedication to your craft, doing the serious physical research. I love that. That's great. Yeah.
Yeah, we know you, the Google Queen.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Google's my friend. I do a lot of
Yeah.
that. But I have done some levels of physical research. I was going to actually jump out of a plane for one of my books, but I just never did that. I wish I would have had the guts to do that level of physical research to do that scene in the book.
Yeah, it's never too late.
Yeah.
I think I'll avoid that storyline in any of mine, so I don't have to do physical research. Yeah.
All right. How much of the personal experience of your life do you put into your books? And this is for both of y'all.
Right. Well, obviously, I can use places that I've been, which is why locations of my books generally tend to be in the UK. Character and occupation.
We lost Jen again.
All right. You want to answer while she's coming back?
Yeah, yeah, there's a lot of personal experiences that I put into my books, whether it be individuals I've known in my life and base characters off of them, particularly family members. I often base family members' characters, and there's a couple of books that are actually loosely based on my life and my experiences. Artist Free Zone is basically my experience and my love story and meeting my current wife. And and then the other book that probably has a heavy influence of my personal life is Disconnected. Disconnected. A lot of that is my sort of coming out story when I first sort of figured out. So there's a big part of that in the beginning when I met the first person I ever had any experiences with as a woman is plucked right from that book. The person that she ends up being with later on is not, but that first experience is pretty much my experience, and even the whole of going to Arizona and all of that, and even the job and all of that is based on my personal experience. So yeah, a lot of my personal experiences, my family, my friends make their way into my books for sure. Sorry, Jen, we lost you. So if you want to.
Well, I think subconsciously I put stuff in, and when my wife's reading my books, she's sometimes laughing about something because she thinks, oh, I recognize that, or that scene, or that person, so yeah, it does come through sometimes. Yeah.
All right. My favorite. Any new books on the horizon?
Well, I know Annette's got something. Well, I'm in the middle of a book at the moment. I did more or less complete it last year, but then I came across a really big plot problem, which being a pantster, this is what happens. So I've gone back to it recently and I'm trying to fix that. So I don't want to make any promises. I haven't told our boss about this, but she's going to know now, isn't she? But yeah, I'm hoping to finish this and get through that.
And what's the book about?
Oh, I'm not telling you that. No.
What?
Well, it's a romance, for goodness sake. It's a romance.
It's a romance. Okay. And the characters are over 40.
Yes.
Okay. And come on, just a little bit of the setting, maybe?
Well, part of it's going to be set in Northumberland on the coast up there, which is a very interesting area.
Okay. Yeah. Good.
So yeah, that's all you're getting. Sorry.
It's okay.
I'm such a blab. I tell everybody.
I know, you tell everybody, and
I do.
I'm the total opposite.
Yeah, so of course everybody knows that I have two more books coming out this year that finish the Next Generation series. The next one is Love Hacks, and it's going to concentrate on Joy, who is the kind of technical expert, and she's in a little bit of a war with another hacker online, and so there's that. And then the third book in the series, Love Sins, brings about the daughter of a hitman who Val ends up taking out, and she somehow gets involved with the women in the organization. So that's the third book in that series. And then I was fascinated by this television show called The Ultimatum, and it was a queer version of it. And The Ultimatum is this show where one partner wants to get married, the other partner does not, and they're given an ultimatum. And they actually have to spend time with someone else, living as if they're together, to see if somebody else might be compatible. So the whole thing is are you gonna stay with your partner and get married after this show, or did you find somebody new, or are you gonna just be on your own, single, and cut them loose? And so I wrote a book that's will come out, I think next year. I think Julie wanted it to come out in November, but I think I'm gonna push for next year since the other two books are coming out for the Next Generation series. And then I just finished a manuscript. I don't know if anybody's going to take it. It's based on the concept of The Parent Trap, the movie, The Parent Trap, only it's kittens. Kittens are in the planning of getting their mommies back together. So it's called The Kitten Trap.
Oh, great. Okay.
A very cute story.
And Allie, tell us about your new books on the horizon.
Let's see, in July, I've actually got two that'll be coming out. Both of them are standalones. The first one is The Blank Page, and it's a kind of discovering oneself challenge book. And I really liked it. It's another attempt at first person, because I think that's what the story required. And then the second one that will come out mid-month is totally different from anything I have ever put out. I mean, it is extremely spicy.
Yes, it is.
It has a lot of erotic passages. It's still a romance, but it's a much different romance. And then later in the year, my final book would be Sullivan's Trace, which is about a horse farm. And then we're already cranking into 2025. So I think we've got some good stuff coming, in the future. So I'm looking forward to it.
Well, I feel like a real sluggard over here. I mean, one book in a couple of years.
Yeah, get to it. Get writing.
Yeah.
We've missed your books.
Yeah. But one of the things we've been doing, Jen, is Annette and I are just a little bit competitive. And we've been getting involved in some competitions with McGee Matthews, just on word counts, and just as a way to keep ourselves accountable, and having somebody looking over us and say, hey, I wrote so many books or so many words today, how did you do? And I think it's for me it's very helpful, just to make me sit down in the chair and do some typing.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah, I look at Allie's word count and I go, gosh darn her, she's just like, and then because normally I would write maybe 1,000 words and go, I'm done, I'm good. But then I'd see here 2,000-3,000 words, so I keep going.
Okay.
True, it's very true.
I don't think I could keep up with either of you, really.
Yeah. So I understand that you going to offer up a book, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, for a giveaway. So you want to tell us a little bit about that?
I'm quite happy to offer up a signed paperback copy of one of the books we talked about today. So it's like starting over or changing perspectives.
Okay, great.
Or the follow-up book to Changing Perspectives, which was Changing Times.
Okay, wonderful. So for all of you who are listening out there, if you want to make a comment or ask a question, and hopefully we can maybe respond to those questions if you send them to us, I will make sure I pull a name. And I'll also offer up the audio or ebook of the next generation for anybody that we pull a name for.
Okay.
So don't forget to check out our YouTube channel and subscribe, please. And yeah, we're good.